Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing some of my favorite annotations from this book, which has a lot of random, miscellaneous facts about ancient Rome. And this section was titled Meeting in No Man's Land, and I wanted to read it here with you. Bismillah. One of the problems facing Roman politicians was that there was no obvious safe spaces where they could discuss matters with their enemies when at war. The ancient world was a very dangerous environment for kings and consuls. How could they be certain that they would not be ambushed, kidnapped, or even killed while discussing a peace treaty? The answer was they could not. It's interesting. The raw reality of the leaders at that time is higher than it was today. I feel like our leaders are very sheltered because they have their bodyguard, their private planes. They don't always have to mix with the public. You know, it's more diplomatic. They have less risk and they risk less. And their lives are soft and cushy and catered, and the only thing they suffer is satire meme accounts on Twitter and either one side of the news spectrum critiquing them, you know? And then they just declare war everywhere without having to fight in it. But here, you see this glimpse of the past where it's like, you could be discussing a peace treaty, and then it's a trap. You know, it reminds me of the Game of Thrones scene where at the end, when Dany has taken... Well, she's dead. Oh, wait, no. At that point, she's dead. And everyone comes together to decide who to make king. And they put Brandon Stark there. But, like, they don't know if it's a trap or what. But then there's also the point where Dany's alive, and she comes in on her dragon, and they don't know if it's a trap that Cersei's gonna do. So you notice something here. When Dany's dead, she's like, oh, we have a bunch of northerners outside to now who will go against the Unsullied if they hurt Jon. You know? So they're trying to discuss peace, and they met in that spot, and it's supposed to be like a neutral zone, right? It's fascinating, you know, how even in fantasy, they can capture how difficult it was if you take out, like, telephones and things like that. It's interesting. Imagine now, like, the leaders are on Zoom, you know? We need world peace, we're on Zoom. It's just so softer now, even though they put more death. Think about it. They're declaring war while, like, just endlessly at the same time dropping devastating bombs, taking out more innocent civilians. When before it's like your army and your army on the field. Now it's like elderly, hospitals, schools. You're like, wow. The leaders are all... They don't walk in the land they devastated. You know what I mean? They don't witness it. They probably see a couple clips, but it's just so different. The first task of a negotiator then was to find a location where risk was minimized. This was a challenge facing the three men who governed Rome as duly elected triumvirs after Caesar's murder. Okay, so the triumvirs, Octavian, or Octavius, Augustus, right? Julius Caesar's adopted son and heir, later to be Rome's first emperor, Augustus. Mark Antony, who believed he should have been Caesar's heir. And a make-weight called Lepidus. Lepidus is like the awkward third wheel. Antony's like, it's me. I should be it. And then Augustus is like, nope, I'm not gonna let that happen. They disliked one another, but knew that they had to make an alliance if they were to defeat armies raised by Caesar's assassins. They selected an island on a river outside Bologna, today's Bologna, as a meeting place. The two protagonists, Octavian and Antony, arrived with 5,000 troops, each on opposing banks of the river, and Lepidus went over to the island with a small task force to check it for weapons or hidden assassins. Only when he waved on all clear did Octavian and Antony leave their bodyguards and advisors behind and cross to the island themselves. Here the three men met alone, but in full view of their forces, and spent 2 days reaching an agreement. Full view of their forces. Smart, so they're like, check everything, no hidden weapons and stuff like that. They come together and fix everything with the people watching. Can you imagine the tension? This way those men were built different back then. If you look at for Antony, he had to, really think about his position. 1 minute you're rolling high, friend of powerful Caesar, then you find he was, skewered, poked up, and now you gotta make sure Octavian likes you. Well, that Lepidus ain't up to nothing, and Cato favoring people, Brutus and all them, that they ain't gonna win you or take you out. But later Antony goes for Cleopatra, and we all know that history. But if you just look at Mark Antony's life, it's like surviving the Gaul, like surviving. It's scary. No wonder why, men would follow these guys into battle, because those leaders actually risked. I wonder if that's why we have such contempt for our rulers now. They don't really have our respect. They're all polished, private jets, orgies, and they're just weak and greedy, and they risk nothing. Gavin Newsom, for example, he was walking down the street, and somebody tried to throw a water ball at him, and he's scurries away, Justin Trudeau. He went to a mosque, and they were booing him, and he just has this fake smile on, oh yes, and he goes to the thing, and you're like, you guys aren't real people. There's just something different about the liberal modern leader versus actual battle tested masculine men of the past, who you really feel they're gonna go down with the ship, but they're gonna fight till the bitter end. Or if they decide to compromise, that they did what was best. It's really interesting when you examine it. Having to find a safe place to locate a peace treaty, ain't no Zoom back then. There's no Twitterati. Where should we meet? Today they just fly on private jets. They have summits, and so we're gonna have a thing, this or that. It just ain't the same, man. I saw one very viral video of, I think it was, Saddam Hussein, and he's walking around. I don't know much about him, but I just remember the clip. And there's all these people with weapons, and they're all blah, 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 cheering, whatever, saying things. And he's just walking around in this crowd, no bodyguards. All the people are there. There's weapons everywhere, and he's totally not disturbed. It's wild. And I remember, you can never catch Joe Biden. Not even Trump. None of them would ever do that. No way. No way. Could you imagine a female president being strong like that? No. They're all where's my champagne? Yes. You know? Bolsonaro, when he was carried in the crowd surfing, like they were cheering him, somebody went like right in his stomach. And like, that's pretty intense. And then just recently in Japan, there was, I don't know if they were a current politician or they were running or whatever, but someone shanked them. But there is still something remarkable about the person who comes up the pyramid and into the base, and like they put them at your level. Now you look at John F. Kennedy. Not gonna go into that rabbit hole. That's above my knowledge. But I understand why people have that fear of like, and they're like, oops, because he was just waving and whatever. Abraham Lincoln, right? He's in the movie theater, and bloop in the back of the head. You're like, wow, okay, that's intense. So it's unfortunate when the leaders are doing something random, and it happens. But there is something very bold about leaders who are in the trenches with their men, or who are not like scared little chihuahuas. I think that's important to have leaders like that. Look at George Washington, for example. He fought. He was like in the cold with his men. It's bizarre. Like, you'll have Joe Biden. He's eating ice cream. You know, he's just feeble, brittle, frail, dementia. And before he pulled the troops out of Afghanistan, it's like there's just troops suffering in the heat. Like, they don't even know what their mission is anymore after 20 years. And it's strange. It's so disconnected, right? I think that's how you see these empires go down. When those who will send you off to perish, and they suffer nothing themselves. Yes, I know Joe Biden's son, he had a son, Beau or whatever, who died. But he died from cancer. He didn't die from combat. And a lot of, like, Prince Harry of England, like, the royals are protected. Like, your kid is protected. You know, they're not going to be sent on the front lines. They're just going to have some managerial, paper-pushing, guarded type of existence, and hired other secret troops to have their backs and shadow them with and without the person's knowledge, right? To protect the golden goose. It's just quite different. And this is like on horseback. Like, you got to get up and close. You know? It's fascinating if you just read through the stories of commanders back then, how they had to actually be about it, and they had to fight in order to command the respect of men. The men back then had a different standard for who's gonna lead you. Either you're gonna pay substantially, or you're gonna motivate me and pay me. But either way, there's gonna be some money there. But few are gonna want to sign up if they think you're leading them off. But today we have more sophisticated propaganda so that people enlist without actually doing it for their leader's glory, you know, their leader's visionary mission. It's quite different. There's so much that could be said about it. But recruitment numbers aren't doing so good in the U.S. military. They've gone really rainbow mafia. So I don't blame people for, like, the internet has exposed how needless the banker wars are. So people are like, I'm not trying to come back with PTSD or with no legs because some ice cream eating dementia patient sent you off to go do something for, you know, oil or whatever. It's quite different. It's not as noble, right? Let me know what you think. What would you do? What location are you having at, right? Want to be in a tall tower? Pat them down before they go in? What kind of scene you thinking about? If you'd like to join my vlog, it's www.subscribestar.com/Milahan. I hope to see you there.